Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Whispers of Deception. Gavin Lockridge tightened his grip on the elegantly wrapped gift box as his SUV crunched along the gravel driveway leading to his mother-in-law's lakeside vacation home. Lights spilled from every window of the sprawling property, and luxury vehicles were parked in neat rows. Diane Harmon's 70th birthday celebration was clearly the social event of the season, which wasn't surprising. The former state representative and wealthy philanthropist had connections throughout Rochester and beyond. "Dad, are you sure we have to go?" Lily, his 6-year-old daughter, asked from the back seat, her voice unusually small. She'd been quiet the entire drive, clutching her stuffed rabbit with white knuckles. "It's Grandma's birthday, sweetheart," Gavin replied, glancing at his daughter through the rearview mirror. "Mom's already here helping set up. We'll just stay a couple of hours, okay?" Lily didn't respond, her eyes fixed on the house ahead. As a security consultant who had built his company from nothing into a 7-figure business, Gavin had developed an instinct for trouble. Something in his daughter's demeanor triggered that internal alarm. He pulled into an empty space between a Mercedes and a BMW, cut the engine, and turned to face her. "What's going on, Lilybug? You're not yourself today." Lily shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Nothing. Is it something about Grandma's house?" He pressed gently. "I just don't like it here," she mumbled. Gavin stepped out and helped Lily from her booster seat. As they approached the sweeping porch with its pristine white columns, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses grew louder. Lily suddenly stopped dead in her tracks, yanking his hand with surprising strength. "Dad, don't go in there," she whispered urgently, her eyes wide with fear. Gavin crouched down to her level. "Why, sweetheart? What's wrong?" Lily's bottom lip trembled. "Please, let's go home." In his 15 years of military service before founding Lockridge Security, Gavin had learned to trust instinct, both his own and others. Something in his daughter's plea resonated with the unease that had been building in him for weeks. Tess had been distant, working late, her explanations vague and defensive when questioned. "Okay," he said, surprising himself. "We'll drop off Grandma's gift and head home." He squeezed her small hand. "I trust you, Lilybug." Relief flooded her features as he placed the wrapped box on the porch swing. He rang the doorbell once, then led Lily back to the car before anyone answered. As they pulled away from the house, his phone vibrated with a text from Tess. "Where are you?" "Everyone's asking." He silenced it without replying. They were halfway home when a delivery truck ahead of them suddenly jackknifed. Gavin swerved hard, the SUV skidding across the rain-slicked road before smashing into the guardrail. The airbags deployed with a deafening bang. "Lily," he shouted, his voice muffled by the settling airbag powder. "Lily, are you okay?" "I'm okay, Daddy," she whimpered from the back seat. "My arm hurts." After ensuring she wasn't seriously injured, Gavin called 911, then helped his daughter out of the car. As they waited for emergency services, huddled under his jacket in the light drizzle, Lily looked up at him with those solemn eyes that sometimes seemed too old for her face. "I saw them, Daddy," she said quietly. "Saw who, sweetheart?" "Mommy and Uncle Griffin. They were kissing in Grandma's bedroom last week when you were in Chicago. Not the way you kiss me goodnight. The way you and Mommy kiss sometimes." The world seemed to tilt beneath Gavin's feet. Griffin Maddox was his wife's cousin's husband, a charming investment banker who had been spending a lot of time at their house lately, supposedly helping Tess with her new business venture. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "Are you sure, Lily?" She nodded solemnly. "I want to find Mommy because I felt sick and the door was open a little bit. They didn't see me." The wail of sirens approached in the distance as Gavin pulled his daughter closer, his mind already calculating, planning, compartmentalizing the pain that threatened to overwhelm him. "Thank you for telling me the truth," he said, keeping his voice even. "You did the right thing." As the ambulance and police cruiser pulled up, Gavin made a silent vow. He wouldn't confront Tess immediately. No, he would do what he did best: gather intelligence, formulate a strategy, and execute it with precision. And in the end, those who had betrayed him would understand exactly who they were dealing with. Chapter 2: Patterns of Betrayal. 3 days after the accident, Gavin sat in his home office, staring at the monitor displaying surveillance footage from the discrete cameras he'd installed throughout their house 6 months ago. The decision had come after a break-in 2 neighborhoods over. At least, that's what he'd told Tess. In reality, subtle changes in her behavior had triggered his suspicions. Sudden password changes on her phone, hushed conversations that ended when he entered a room, weeknight networking events that left her returning home with flushed cheeks and the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne. Now, watching the timestamp on the bottom corner, Gavin's jaw clenched as he saw Griffin Maddox enter through the side door at 1:47 p.m., less than an hour after Gavin had left for a business meeting. 7 minutes later, Tess appeared, and they embraced with hungry familiarity. Gavin watched, stone-faced, as they disappeared upstairs. He closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair, mind drifting to when he'd first met Teresa Tess Harmon 8 years ago. He'd been hired to overhaul security for a charity gala hosted by her mother, Diane. Tess had been vibrant and ambitious, fresh from completing her MBA and working for a prestigious marketing firm. Their chemistry had been immediate and intense. 18 months later, they were married, and Lily arrived the following year. For 5 years, life had seemed perfect, at least on the surface. But looking back, Gavin recognized the warning signs he'd chosen to ignore. Tess's perpetual dissatisfaction, her constant yearning for more. More money, more prestige, more excitement. His growing success with Lockridge Security had initially satisfied her appetite, but the thrill of climbing the social ladder had eventually worn off. Their marriage had begun to fray 3 years ago, around the time Griffin and his wife Bryn had moved to Rochester. Bryn was Tess's second cousin, but the 2 women had grown up together more like sisters. Griffin, with his Ivy League pedigree and Connecticut blue blood background, embodied everything Tess had always admired. The couple's frequent presence in their lives had never bothered Gavin, until now. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Lily stood in the doorway, her left arm in a purple cast. "Daddy, can we have ice cream?" Gavin smiled, pushing away the darkness that threatened to consume him. "Of course, Lilybug. Let me just finish up here. Is Mom coming home for dinner?" she asked, hope in her voice despite everything. "She texted that she's working late again," Gavin replied, keeping his tone neutral. "Just you and me tonight." After tucking Lily into bed later that evening, Gavin retreated to his office and opened his safe. Inside was a worn leather notebook, a habit from his military days when he'd learned never to trust digital records for the most sensitive information. He'd continued the practice in civilian life, documenting anomalies in both his personal and professional worlds. Flipping through the pages, he noted the pattern of Tess's absences, cross-referenced with Griffin's supposed business trips and family commitments. The correlation was undeniable. What he couldn't determine was whether Diane was aware of the affair. The Harmon family had always operated with an unspoken code. Appearances mattered above all else. His phone buzzed with a text from Tess. "Meeting running long. Don't wait up." Gavin checked the GPS tracker he'd installed on her car. She was at the Lakeside Hotel downtown. A quick call to a former colleague who now headed security there confirmed what he already suspected. Griffin Maddox had checked in 3 hours earlier. Replacing the notebook in the safe, Gavin moved to his closet and removed a false panel in the back. Behind it was a weatherproof case containing items from his former life, one that Tess knew little about. Before founding Lockridge Security, he'd spent 5 years in military intelligence and another 3 working for a private contractor that specialized in operations the government preferred to keep off the books. He didn't remove anything from the case. Not yet. But seeing it reminded him of who he truly was beneath the successful businessman exterior. Someone trained to assess threats, exploit weaknesses, and eliminate obstacles with surgical precision. Someone who understood that mercy was often mistaken for weakness. His phone rang, displaying Apollo Werner's name. Apollo had been Gavin's right-hand man in both military and civilian life, now serving as COO of Lockard Security. How's she doing? Apollo asked without preamble. Lily's fine, just a broken arm and some bruises. She's resilient. And how are you doing? Gavin paused. Apollo was the only person who knew him well enough to sense when something was wrong. I've been better. Is this about the accident? Or something else? Tess is having an affair with Griffin Maddox. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, Apollo sighed. How sure are you? Lily saw them together. I've verified it with surveillance. What's your play? I'm still working on that, Gavin replied, his voice hardening. But I can promise you one thing. When I'm done, they'll wish they'd never crossed me. Chapter 3. The Architect of Vengeance. The first month of surveillance yielded more than enough evidence to destroy both Tess and Griffin many times over. Gavin documented their encounters meticulously, dates, times, locations. He tracked their communications through the spyware he'd installed on Tess's devices and the keystroke logger on their home computer. He compiled financial records showing unusual transactions that suggested Griffin might be using company funds to finance their rendezvous. But simple exposure wasn't what Gavin wanted. The revelation of an affair would hurt Tess's reputation temporarily, perhaps cost Griffin his marriage, but the pain would be fleeting. Gavin wanted something more permanent, something that would strip them of everything they valued. One afternoon, while Lily was at a play date, he met with his lawyer, Pascal Reeves, at a cafe 40 miles outside of Rochester. "You've been thorough," Pascal remarked, reviewing the documentation Gavin had provided. "With this, you could get full custody of Lily and most of your assets in a divorce." "That's not enough," Gavin replied, his voice calm despite the storm raging inside him. "I need to understand Griffin's business dealings more intimately." Pascal raised an eyebrow. "That's dangerous territory. His firm, Maddox Capital, handles investments for some very powerful people, which is precisely why I'm interested. People that powerful rarely achieve success without cutting corners." "What exactly are you planning, Gavin?" "Justice," he replied simply. "Now, tell me about the offshore accounts you mentioned." By the time he returned home, Gavin had a clearer picture of how to proceed. He needed to maintain the facade of normalcy while gathering one final piece of intelligence: whether Diane Harmon was complicit in her daughter's affair. The opportunity came when Tess announced she'd be spending the weekend at her mother's lake house to help with some renovations. A transparent lie, given that Griffin had cleared his schedule for the same weekend. "Actually, I was thinking Lily and I could join you," Gavin suggested. "I haven't seen your mother in weeks." The flash of panic in Tess's eyes confirmed his suspicions. "Oh, it's going to be messy with the contractors. Not really a good time for visitors." "I insist," Gavin said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Family time is important. Don't you agree?" Tess's smile faltered. "Of course. I'll let Mom know we're all coming." The drive to the lake house that Friday evening was tense, with Tess texting furiously from the passenger seat. Lily, perceptive as always, remained unusually quiet in the back. Diane greeted them at the door, with her politician's smile firmly in place. "What a lovely surprise. I wasn't expecting all of you." "Change of plans," Gavin replied pleasantly. "I hope we're not interrupting anything." "Not at all," Diane said, though her eyes darted nervously to her daughter. As they settled in, Gavin noted the absence of any contractors or signs of renovation. The house was immaculate as always. He also observed Diane taking Tess aside for a hushed conversation in the kitchen, their expressions serious. After dinner, when Lily was engrossed in a movie and Tess had stepped outside to make a work call, Gavin approached his mother-in-law with 2 glasses of her favorite bourbon. "Beautiful evening," he commented, handing her a glass as they stood on the screened porch overlooking the lake. "Indeed." Diane's voice was guarded. "I've always admired your dedication to family, Diane. The Harmon name carries such weight in this community." "We've worked hard to build our reputation," she agreed cautiously. "Which makes me wonder," Gavin continued, swirling the amber liquid in his glass, "why you'd risk it all by facilitating your daughter's affair." The glass nearly slipped from Diane's hand. "I don't know what you are." "Please," Gavin interrupted, his voice still pleasant, but with an edge of steel. "Let's not insult each other's intelligence." This house has been a convenient meeting place for Tess and Griffin for months. You've provided alibis, made excuses, perhaps even warned them when I was getting too close. Diane's political mask slipped, revealing a calculating hardness that reminded him of Tess. What do you want, Gavin? I want to understand why. Is it because Griffin comes from the right pedigree? Because his family name opens doors that mine can't? You've given Tess a comfortable life, Diane conceded, but Griffin can give her the world. His family's connections, their history, their money, Gavin finished for her. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Tess married down when she chose me, and you've never forgiven either of us for it. You're a self-made man, Gavin. That's admirable, but some doors will always remain closed to you. The conversation confirmed what Gavin had suspected. Diane wasn't merely turning a blind eye to the affair. She was actively encouraging it, perhaps even orchestrating it. Later that night, as Tess feigned sleep beside him, Gavin finalized his plan. The next morning, he suggested taking Lily fishing at the other end of the lake, giving Tess the opening she needed. Sure enough, an hour after they left, Griffin's Porsche appeared on the property security feed that Gavin accessed remotely from his phone. "Dad, they're going to hurt each other, aren't they?" Lily asked suddenly as they sat in the small fishing boat. Gavin looked at his daughter, struck by her perception. "What makes you say that?" "Mom and Uncle Griffin. And you." Her small face was solemn. "I don't want anyone to get hurt." Gavin gently squeezed her shoulder. "Sometimes, Lily Bug, when people make bad choices, there are consequences. But I promise you this. I will always protect you, no matter what." As they returned to the house hours later, Gavin noted with satisfaction that Griffin's car was gone. Tess appeared relaxed for the first time all weekend, clearly believing she had managed the situation successfully. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Gavin slipped out to the boathouse where he had hidden a waterproof case earlier. Inside was everything he needed to set his plan in motion. Phase 1 would begin on Monday with an anonymous tip to the SEC about irregularities at Maddox Capital. Phase 2 would involve Pascal Reeves filing specific paperwork. Phase 3 would depend on how Tess and Griffin responded to the first two. By Sunday evening, as they drove back to Rochester, Gavin's mind was clear. The architect of vengeance had drawn up his blueprints with meticulous care. Now it was time to break ground. Chapter 4. The First Domino. Monday morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the darkness Gavin carried within him. He dressed with particular care. Charcoal suit, burgundy tie, platinum cufflinks Tess had given him for their 5th anniversary. Today marked the beginning of the end for those who had betrayed him, though none of them knew it yet. "You're looking sharp," Tess commented over breakfast, her tone casual. "Big meeting." "You could say that," Gavin replied, sipping his coffee. He studied his wife across the table. Her carefully applied makeup, the deliberate way she avoided prolonged eye contact, the nervous tapping of her fingernails against her phone. She was waiting for something. After dropping Lily at school, Gavin drove not to his office, but to the local FBI field office, where Special Agent Monroe Calloway was waiting for him. They had history. 3 years ago, Gavin had helped the Bureau with a cybersecurity case that had earned him both goodwill and a few unofficial favors. "This better be worth clearing my morning," Monroe said by way of greeting, ushering Gavin into a conference room. "It will be," Gavin assured him, setting a thick folder on the table. "Everything you need to open an investigation into Maddox Capital for securities fraud, wire fraud, and possible RICO violations." Monroe raised an eyebrow. "This have anything to do with the fact that Griffin Maddox is sleeping with your wife?" Gavin's expression remained impassive. "My personal situation is irrelevant. The evidence speaks for itself." The agent skimmed through the documents, his eyebrows rising incrementally. "This is comprehensive. How did you obtain all this?" "Legally, if that's your concern. I have sources within the financial industry who owed me favors. Everything can be verified through official channels." Monroe leaned back, studying Gavin carefully. "I know you well enough to understand you're not here out of civic duty. What's your endgame?" "Justice takes many forms," Gavin replied evenly. "I'm simply pointing you toward where you might find it." By noon, the first domino had fallen. A team of FBI agents descended on the offices of Maddox Capital, boxes of documents and computers in hand as they left. The news hit the financial wires almost immediately, causing the firm's publicly traded parent company to suspend trading amid plummeting stock values. Gavin watched it unfold from Apollo's office, a glass of Macallan in hand. "You sure about this?" Apollo asked, his expression concerned. "Once you start down this road." "I've been down worse roads," Gavin cut in. "Besides, Griffin's legitimate business practices are nearly as criminal as the ones he hides. The FBI would have caught up to him eventually. And Tess, what about her?" Gavin's phone buzzed with a text from his wife. "Have you seen the news about Griffin? So shocking. Bryn just called Diane in hysterics, playing the concerned family friend while simultaneously messaging her lover. Her duplicity was almost admirable. Tess made her choice," Gavin said finally. "Now she'll live with the consequences." The second phase began that afternoon. While the financial world was still reeling from the FBI raid, Pascal Reeves filed a lawsuit on behalf of a shell company Gavin had established months earlier. The lawsuit alleged that Maddox Capital had defrauded investors by misrepresenting certain real estate assets that, through a complex series of transactions, Gavin now controlled majority interest in. By evening, Griffin Maddox's world was imploding. His firm was under federal investigation, key investors were pulling out, and now a previously unknown entity was threatening to seize his most valuable holdings. The man himself had gone aground, not answering calls or texts, including 17 increasingly frantic ones from Tess that Gavin had observed through his surveillance. When Gavin arrived home, he found Tess pacing the kitchen, her composure fracturing visibly when she saw him. "Have you heard from Griffin?" she asked, then immediately tried to backtrack. "I mean, Bryn is beside herself, and I thought maybe through your security connections." "Why would I have heard from Griffin?" Gavin asked mildly, setting his briefcase down. "We're hardly close. I just thought, with your law enforcement contacts, you might know more about what's happening." "I know that the FBI doesn't raid investment firms without cause," he replied, moving to pour himself a drink. "And I know that Griffin's always struck me as someone willing to cut corners to get ahead." Tessa's eyes narrowed slightly. "You almost sound glad about his troubles." "I'm indifferent," Gavin said with a shrug, "though I'm concerned about how this might affect Lily. She's quite fond of her Uncle Griffin, isn't she?" The barb hit its mark. Tess blanched, her hand unconsciously touching her throat where a small gold pendant, a gift from Griffin that she claimed was from the office, lay against her skin. "I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding," she managed. "We'll see," Gavin replied, raising his glass in a mock toast. "Justice has a way of finding those who deserve it." Later that night, after Tess had retreated to their bedroom with a migraine, Gavin received a call from a burner phone he'd given to Bryn Maddox weeks earlier after anonymously sending her evidence of her husband's infidelity. "He's gone," Bryn said without preamble, her voice raw from crying. "Emptied our joint accounts, took his passport. Left me a note saying he's sorry, but he had to leave the country. That the FBI has it all wrong, but he can't fight it." "I'm sorry, Bryn," Gavin said, injecting genuine sympathy into his voice. Bryn was collateral damage in this war, but he had made arrangements to insulate her financially through anonymous trusts. "Did you know?" she asked suddenly. "About him and Tess?" The question hung in the air between them. "Yes," he finally admitted. "I've known for some time." "What are you going to do?" "What I must," Gavin answered. "What about you?" Her laugh was bitter. "File for divorce. Try to salvage what's left of my life from this wreckage. The FBI has already questioned me twice. If you need anything—" "I don't want your help, Gavin," she interrupted. "But I do want you to promise me something. Make her pay too. Don't let Tess walk away unscathed while Griffin loses everything." "You have my word," Gavin replied solemnly. "When I'm done, neither of them will have anything left." After hanging up, Gavin checked the international flight manifest his contacts had been monitoring. Griffin had boarded a private jet to the Cayman Islands 3 hours earlier. Exactly as predicted. In his office, Gavin opened his notebook and crossed off the first 2 items on his list. Phase 1 and 2 were complete. Tomorrow would bring Phase 3, The isolation of Tess Lockridge from everything and everyone she held dear. Chapter 5. Severing Ties. The society pages of Rochester's local newspaper had always fawned over Tess Lockridge, daughter of former state Representative Diane Harmon, marketing executive, philanthropist, and style icon of the city's elite social circle. Gavin had watched for years as she cultivated her public image with the precision of a master gardener, pruning away anything that might tarnish the perfect picture. Now it was time to uproot the entire garden. The next phase began not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a series of quiet phone calls. Gavin's years in security had taught him that information was the most valuable currency, and he had amassed a considerable fortune. Politicians with secrets, business leaders with hidden vices, socialites with carefully concealed pasts. Gavin had files on dozens of Rochester's most influential figures, not for blackmail, but for insurance. Today, those investments would pay dividends. By mid-morning, Tess's phone was buzzing constantly. The charity gala she'd been co-chairing had regretfully decided to move in a different direction. The marketing firm where she served as a consultant had concerns about recent developments and wanted to pause their collaboration. 3 lunch invitations for the coming week were canceled with flimsy excuses. What the hell is going on? Tess demanded when she cornered Gavin in his home office. Her face was flushed with anger and humiliation. Suddenly, everyone's treating me like I have the plague. Gavin looked up from his computer with practiced innocence. I assume it's related to the Griffin situation. People are distancing themselves from anyone connected to him. But I'm not connected to him. He's married to my cousin. And yet, you do seem unusually upset about his legal troubles, Gavin observed mildly. Almost as if you have a personal stake in the matter. Tess faltered momentarily before regaining her composure. He's family. Of course I'm concerned. Family. Right. Gavin returned his attention to his screen. I'm sure that's all it is. The continued unraveling of Tess's social standing was accompanied by another blow that afternoon. Lockridge Security announced the acquisition of Harmon Marketing Solutions, the boutique agency founded by Diane Harmon 20 years earlier. The press release highlighted that the acquisition had been in the works for months, with Diane planning to retire. It was, of course, a complete fabrication. The deal had been solidified just 3 days ago, after Gavin presented Diane with evidence that her signature luxury real estate developments had been partly financed with money from Griffin's schemes. Facing potential criminal charges herself, Diane had capitulated quickly, accepting Gavin's offer to purchase her company for a fraction of its worth in exchange for his silence. When Tess called her mother in a panic, Diane didn't answer, another stipulation of their agreement. By evening, Diane had checked into an exclusive wellness retreat in Arizona, effectively cutting off her daughter's primary source of support and influence. Meanwhile, Gavin had enlisted Apollo to implement the next stage, financial isolation. Apollo, through a series of legally complex but ultimately legitimate transactions, froze Tess's access to the joint investment accounts that held the bulk of their liquid assets. Her credit cards began declining purchases, and her personal bank account, to which Gavin had never had access, was flagged for suspicious activity by the bank's fraud department. I can't even buy groceries, Tess hissed when she returned from a humiliating encounter at the organic market she frequented. My cards were declined in front of everyone. How strange, Gavin remarked, not looking up from helping Lily with her homework. You can use mine for now. I'll call the bank tomorrow. That night, Tess tried reaching Griffin again. Gavin, monitoring her communications, watched as she sent increasingly desperate messages that went unanswered. Please respond. Everything's falling apart. Mom's not answering. I think Gavin knows. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that Griffin's escape to the Cayman Islands had been orchestrated by Gavin himself, through intermediaries who had convinced the panicking investment banker that fleeing was his best option. Now, safely isolated on an island property that Griffin believed belonged to a sympathetic client, but was actually owned by another of Gavin's shell companies, the man was effectively under house arrest, his communications monitored and manipulated. The replies Tess received from Griffin were actually crafted by Gavin. Can't talk now. Laying low. Need to protect myself. Will contact when safe. By the end of the week, Tess was socially ostracized, financially constrained, and emotionally isolated. She moved through the house like a ghost, jumping at small noises, checking her phone obsessively. The woman who had once commanded every room she entered was now diminished, uncertain. It was time for the next phase. Saturday morning, Gavin suggested they visit a property he was considering purchasing, a remote lake house about 2 hours from Rochester. It would be good for us to get away from everything, he told Tess. You've been so stressed lately. The drive was silent, with Lily absorbed in her tablet in the back seat and Tess staring out the window. When they arrived at the secluded property, surrounded by dense forest with no neighbors in sight, Gavin saw a flash of unease cross Tess's face. It's very isolated, she commented as they walked through the rustic but well-appointed house. That's the appeal, Gavin replied. Privacy, security. He smiled at her, and for the first time since this began, he let a hint of his true feelings show. No unexpected visitors. Tess took an involuntary step back, her eyes widening slightly. What does that mean? Instead of answering, Gavin turned to Lily. Sweetheart, why don't you check out the dock? You can see the whole lake from there. Stay where I can see you from the window. Once Lily was out of earshot, Gavin reached into his pocket and withdrew his phone. He pulled up a video and turned the screen toward Tess. It showed her and Griffin in an intimate embrace in their bedroom, footage from 2 weeks earlier. How long have you known? Tess whispered, her face draining of color. Long enough, Gavin replied, his voice cold. Lily saw you at your mother's lake house months ago. She was the one who warned me not to go inside that day. A 6-year-old child with more integrity than her mother. Tess reached for the kitchen counter to steady herself. Gavin, I can explain. Save it. He cut her off. I'm not interested in your explanations or excuses. What I want to know is whether you actually believed you'd get away with it. Did you really think I was that blind? That's stupid. It wasn't about you, she said, her voice small. Griffin and I. Griffin's gone, Gavin interrupted. He fled the country, abandoned his wife, and left you to deal with the fallout alone. He hasn't answered your messages because he's too busy saving himself. Tess's face crumpled. What have you done? Me? Gavin's laugh was devoid of humor. I haven't done anything but expose the truth. The FBI investigation, Griffin's financial troubles. Those are the consequences of his own actions. The fact that it aligned with his affair with my wife is just poetic justice. What do you want from me? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Nothing, Gavin replied simply. I want nothing from you. Not anymore. The divorce papers are being delivered to our house on Monday. I've already moved most of my things to a new place. Lily will live primarily with me, though you'll have visitation if she wants it. The house will be sold, and you'll receive a settlement that, while generous by legal standards, will barely support the lifestyle you're accustomed to. You can't do this, Tess breathed, panic rising in her voice. You can't just erase our life together. I'm not erasing anything, Gavin countered. I'm simply ensuring that actions have consequences. Your mother learned that lesson. Griffin is learning it now, and so will you. He turned to look out the window at Lily, who was tossing pebbles into the lake. She's the only innocent in all of this. Everything I've done, everything I'm going to do, is to protect her from people who put their selfish desires above loyalty, honesty, and family. Tess lunged for him suddenly, her hands clawing at his face in desperate rage. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so perfect, so much better than everyone else. Gavin caught her wrists easily, holding her at arm's length until she subsided into broken sobs. I never claimed to be perfect, he said quietly, but I would never have betrayed you the way you betrayed me. As they drove back to Rochester that evening, Tess huddled in the passenger seat, periodically wiping away silent tears. Lily, perceptive as always, reached forward from the back seat to pat her mother's shoulder. It's okay, Mom, she said softly. Dad says sometimes things have to break before they can get fixed. Gavin met his daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror, marveling at her compassion even as his own heart remained encased in ice. For Lily's sake, he would make the transition as smooth as possible. But for Tess, there would be no redemption, no forgiveness, no second chances. The severing of ties was nearly complete. Chapter 6: The Gathering Storm. Rain lashed against the windows of Gavin's new penthouse apartment overlooking the river. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation at the lake house, and the divorce proceedings were moving forward with clinical efficiency. Pascal Reeves had assembled a legal team that operated with the precision of a military strike force, anticipating and neutralizing every countermove from Tess's increasingly desperate attorneys. "She's running out of options," Pascal reported during their weekly meeting. "Her latest lawyer, the third one, by the way, is pushing for mediation." "Not interested," Gavin replied, studying the downtown skyline through the rain-streaked glass. "It might be worth considering," Pascal suggested carefully. "The judge is showing signs of fatigue with the scorched earth approach." Gavin turned, fixing his attorney with a steady gaze. "The terms remain non-negotiable. Lily stays with me. Tess gets supervised visitation until a psychological evaluation deems her stable enough for more. The financial settlement stands as offered." Pascal sighed but nodded. He knew better than to push further. "On another note, the FBI is requesting a formal interview with you regarding Griffin Maddox. They've traced some unusual financial transactions that suggest he might have been laundering money through accounts connected to your security firm." A ghost of a smile touched Gavin's lips. "How unfortunate. Schedule the interview. I have nothing to hide." What the FBI didn't know, what no one except Apollo knew, was that those transactions had been planted through an elaborate scheme designed to create a false paper trail implicating Maddox in even more serious crimes than he'd actually committed. By the time investigators unraveled the truth, Griffin would be facing charges in multiple jurisdictions. After Pascal left, Gavin received a call from Bryn Maddox. Since their last conversation, he'd provided her, anonymously, through intermediaries, with information that had allowed her to secure assets Griffin had attempted to hide. "They found him," she said without preamble. "The FBI. He's being extradited from the Caymans." "Are you okay?" Gavin asked, genuinely concerned for her well-being. "I'm numb, honestly, but I wanted you to know that I received the documents. The offshore account information, the property deeds. I don't know how you got them, and I don't want to know. But thank you. You deserved better than what happened to you," Gavin said simply. "So did you," Bryn replied. "Have you heard from her?" "Tess? Only through attorneys. My mother told me she's living in a small apartment on the east side now. Apparently, none of her friends are returning her calls anymore." There was a pause. "Is that part of your plan too?" "People show their true nature in times of crisis," Gavin answered carefully. "I may have simply helped that process along." After hanging up, Gavin checked the time and called Lily, who was spending the weekend with her maternal grandmother. Despite Diane's complicity in the affair, Gavin had permitted these visits, partly for Lily's sake, and partly because Diane, thoroughly cowed by the evidence he held against her, now served as an unwilling spy in the enemy camp. Through Lily's innocent observations and Diane's carefully orchestrated reports, he maintained surveillance on Tess. "Hi, Dad." Lily's voice brightened his mood instantly. "Grandma's teaching me to make apple pie." "That sounds wonderful, Lilybug. Are you having a good time?" "Yes, but I miss you. When are you coming to get me?" "Tomorrow afternoon, just like we planned." "Is your mom there?" There was a pause. "She was here earlier, but she left." She was crying again. Gavin's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry to hear that. Did she say why?" "She said bad people were trying to hurt her." "Is that true, Dad? Are there bad people after Mom?" "No, sweetheart. Your mom is just going through a difficult time right now. But she'll be okay." After reassuring Lily and ending the call, Gavin opened his laptop and accessed the surveillance feed from the small apartment Tess now occupied, a far cry from their sprawling suburban home. The cameras installed by operatives posing as maintenance workers showed Tess pacing frantically, phone pressed to her ear. Activating the audio, he heard her pleading with someone. "Don't understand. He's systematically destroying everything. My reputation, my finances, my future. You promised you'd help me if things went wrong." The voice on the other end, undetectable through the surveillance, evidently delivered disappointing news because Tess hurled the phone across the room with a scream of frustration. Gavin watched dispassionately as she collapsed onto her sofa, sobbing. He felt no satisfaction in her distress, but neither did he feel pity. The woman he had loved, the mother of his child, had revealed herself to be a stranger, someone capable of profound betrayal, who had conspired with her lover and her own mother to deceive him for months. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Things have gone too far. Meet me at Riverview Park tomorrow at noon." Gavin considered ignoring it, but curiosity won out. What desperate play was Tess attempting now? He texted back a single word, "Fine." The next morning, before his meeting with Tess, Gavin stopped by Apollo's office to review security footage from the firm's various client sites. One particular feed caught his attention: the loading dock of Harmon Development Group's headquarters, where crates were being loaded into unmarked vans in the pre-dawn hours. "When was this taken?" he asked Apollo. "Last night, around 3 a.m. Our night supervisor flagged it as suspicious." Gavin studied the footage more closely, recognizing one of the figures directing the operation: Wyatt Harmon, Diane's younger brother and Tessa's uncle. Though officially retired, Wyatt had maintained connections to the family business and was rumored to handle the more unorthodox aspects of the Harmon empire. "Have our team follow those vans," Gavin instructed, "and pull everything we have on Wyatt Harmon's recent activities. You think this is related to your situation with Tess? The timing is suspicious. The Harmons aren't known for accepting defeat gracefully." By the time Gavin arrived at Riverview Park, dark clouds had gathered overhead, mirroring the ominous feeling that had settled in his gut. He found Tess sitting on a bench overlooking the water, her once impeccable appearance now diminished by stress and lack of sleep. "Thank you for coming," she said as he sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. "What do you want, Tess?" She took a deep breath. "I want you to stop. This vendetta, it's gone beyond punishment. You're destroying lives, including your own daughter's." "Lily is doing fine," Gavin countered. "She's resilient, and she has me. She needs her mother too," Tess insisted. "And she needs you to be the man I married, not this calculating machine you've become." Gavin laughed without humor. "That's rich, coming from you. You conspired with your lover and your mother to deceive me for nearly a year. You were planning to leave me, take Lily, and clean out our accounts. I found the paperwork, Tess. The passport application for Lily with her name changed to Harmon instead of Lockridge." Tess blanched. "How did you?" "I know everything." Gavin cut her off. "Every detail of your plan with Griffin. How you were going to claim emotional abuse to get full custody. How you were going to relocate to Connecticut near his family's estate. How your mother was helping facilitate the whole thing, using her political connections to smooth the way." "It wasn't like that," Tess protested weakly. "Not at first. Griffin and we didn't plan to fall in love." "Love?" Gavin's voice hardened. "Was it love when you discussed having me investigated for fraudulent business practices to destroy my reputation? Was it love when you and Griffin laughed about how oblivious I was? I have the recordings, Tess. Every damning word." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I made terrible mistakes. I know that. But this systematic destruction, it has to stop. If not for me, then for Lily." "This isn't about punishment," Gavin said quietly. "It's about justice. Actions have consequences. You, Griffin, your mother, you all chose your paths knowing the risks. Now you're living with the results. My Uncle Wyatt thinks you've lost your mind," Tess said suddenly, her tone shifting. "He says you're dangerous and need to be stopped before you hurt someone." The mention of Wyatt confirmed Gavin's suspicions. "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning," Tess replied, rising from the bench. "You've made powerful enemies, Gavin. Enemies who don't play by the rules like you do." She hesitated, then added softly, "I never wanted it to come to this." As she walked away, Gavin remained seated, processing the implicit threat. The Harmon family was circling the wagons, preparing to strike back. Wyatt Harmon, with his rumored connections to less than legitimate business associates, posed a more unpredictable threat than Diane's political maneuvering or Griffin's financial schemes. The storm was gathering, just as Gavin had anticipated. In fact, he had counted on it. Back at his apartment, he opened the weatherproof case from his closet and removed several items: a satellite phone, a set of encrypted flash drives, and a small leather-bound book containing contact information for individuals from his past life. People who operated in the shadows, who understood that sometimes justice required working outside traditional channels. It was time to activate the final phase of his plan. The Harmons believed they were preparing to strike back, unaware that they were actually walking into an elaborate trap years in the making, a contingency Gavin had established long before he had any reason to use it. He made 3 calls. The first to Pascal Reeves, instructing him to expedite certain legal filings. The second to Apollo, activating security protocols they had designed for worst-case scenarios. The third to a number he hadn't dialed in over 5 years. "It's Lockridge," he said when the line connected. "I'm calling in that favor." The gathering storm would soon break. And when it did, Gavin would be the only one left standing. Chapter 7. Checkmate. The mansion on Lakeshore Drive had once seemed like the embodiment of old money and political influence. Tonight, with rain lashing against its Victorian facade and thunder rolling across the water, it looked more like a mausoleum, a monument to a dying dynasty. Gavin bypassed the security system with practiced ease, making his way through the darkened house until he reached Diane Harmon's study. She was there, as expected, nursing a glass of bourbon while reviewing documents spread across her antique desk. "Breaking and entering is a felony, you know," she said without looking up, betraying no surprise at his presence. "So is conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, an accessory to embezzlement," Gavin countered, settling into the leather chair across from her. "Not to mention the more colorful activities your brother Wyatt has been engaged in recently." Diane finally raised her eyes to meet his. "What do you want, Gavin? Haven't you done enough damage to my family?" "I'm here to offer you a choice," he replied evenly. "One last opportunity to salvage something from this situation." She laughed bitterly. "How generous of you. And what exactly are my options?" Gavin placed a flash drive on the desk between them. "This contains evidence of every illegal activity the Harmon family has engaged in over the past 2 decades. Tax evasion, bribery of public officials, illegal campaign contributions, fraudulent real estate deals, a comprehensive history of corruption spanning 3 generations." "You're bluffing," Diane scoffed, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. "You know I'm not," Gavin replied calmly. "Your father taught you to keep records of everything, leverage against potential betrayals. Those records were stored in a safe behind the painting in your lake house bedroom, the same bedroom where my wife and her lover conducted their affair." The color drained from Diane's face. "How did you?" "I've been planning for this possibility for years," Gavin interrupted. "Long before I had any reason to use it. I've always believed in being prepared for all contingencies." "So what's the choice you're offering?" Diane asked, her political mask slipping to reveal genuine fear. "Option 1. You call off Wyatt and whatever scheme he's planning. You publicly support the divorce settlement as it stands. You make no attempt to interfere with my custody of Lily. In return, this evidence remains sealed, and you get to retire with your reputation and freedom intact." And option 2. "I release everything," Gavin said simply, "to the FBI, the IRS, the media. By this time tomorrow, the Harmon name will be synonymous with corruption. Your political legacy will be in tatters, your social standing destroyed, and your financial empire dismantled." Diane reached for her bourbon with a slightly trembling hand. "You would do that to Lily? Destroy her family name out of spite?" "Don't try to use my daughter as leverage," Gavin warned, his voice hardening. "Not when you were willing to help take her away from me. Besides, she's a Lockridge, not a Harmon." There was a long silence as Diane weighed her options. Finally, she asked, "What about Tess? What about her?" "She's still my daughter." "And Lily is still my daughter," Gavin countered. "That didn't stop you from conspiring against me." Diane studied him with newfound respect tinged with fear. "You know, I always underestimated you. I saw the successful business, the military background, but I never really understood who you were beneath the surface." "Few people do," Gavin acknowledged. "It's an advantage in my line of work." "And what happens after I agree to your terms?" "You simply disappear from our lives with Lily. That's the general idea. Though I should mention that the evidence on that drive is just one copy. If anything happens to me, or if my daughter's well-being is ever threatened, multiple dead man switches will activate, releasing everything automatically. Diane closed her eyes briefly, the gesture one of defeat. You've thought of everything, haven't you? It's what I do. Then I don't really have a choice, do I? She reached for the phone on her desk. I'll call Wyatt now. Gavin stood. One more thing. Griffin Maddox. Diane's expression tightened. What about him? He returns to face the charges against him. No mysterious accidents. No disappearances. No convenient legal loopholes. He pays for what he's done. He's not family. Diane replied dismissively. Do what you want with him. As Gavin left the mansion, the rain had stopped, and the first hints of dawn were lightening the eastern sky. The confrontation with Diane had gone exactly as planned, but the night wasn't over yet. There was one more piece to put in place. 20 minutes later, he arrived at an industrial warehouse on the outskirts of town. Inside, illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights, Wyatt Harmon was supervising the unloading of crates, the same crates Gavin had observed being removed from Harmon Development Group's headquarters. You have spectacularly bad timing, Lockridge, Wyatt drawled when he spotted Gavin approaching. Two burly men moved to flank their boss, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. On the contrary, Gavin replied, seemingly unconcerned by the implied threat. I'd say my timing is perfect. At that moment, the warehouse doors burst open and FBI agents swarmed in, weapons drawn. Leading them was Special Agent Monroe Calloway, who approached with a grim smile. Wyatt Harmon, you're under arrest for firearms trafficking, interstate transportation of stolen goods, and conspiracy to commit murder for hire. He nodded toward Gavin. Thanks for the tip. As Wyatt was handcuffed and the crates, containing illegal weapons bound for buyers across state lines, were cataloged as evidence, Monroe pulled Gavin aside. I've been trying to nail this bastard for years, he said. How did you know about this shipment? Let's just say I've been paying very close attention to the Harmon family's activities lately, Gavin replied. Professional curiosity. Monroe's eyes narrowed suspiciously. This have anything to do with your ongoing divorce? Pure coincidence, Gavin assured him with a perfectly straight face. Though, I'd appreciate it if you could keep my name out of the official reports. For security reasons. Why, security reasons. Monroe shook his head. You know, sometimes you scare me, Lockridge. I'll take that as a compliment. By the time Gavin returned to his apartment, the sun had fully risen. He showered, changed, and prepared breakfast, timing it perfectly so that when Apollo arrived with Lily, warm pancakes were waiting. Dad! Lily exclaimed, running into his arms. Uncle Apollo let me ride in his cool car with the special lights. Did he now? Gavin smiled, lifting her into a hug. Over her shoulder, he met Apollo's gaze questioningly. Everything's handled, Apollo confirmed quietly. Diane called off the dogs. Wyatt's arrest is all over the news. And Griffin Maddox landed at the airport an hour ago, accompanied by federal marshals. And Tess, attempting damage control. She's meeting with her new attorney as we speak. Gavin nodded, setting Lily down. Sweetheart, why don't you go wash up for breakfast? I need to talk to Uncle Apollo for a minute. Once she was out of earshot, Apollo asked, Is it over? Almost, Gavin replied. There's still the matter of the divorce hearing tomorrow. You think she'll fight it? She'll try. But with her uncle arrested, her mother neutralized, and her lover facing decades in prison, she's running out of options and allies. Apollo studied his friend carefully. And after tomorrow? What then? Gavin's expression softened slightly as he glanced toward the hallway where Lily had disappeared. Then we build a new life, one without betrayal or deception. You ever think about forgiving her? For Lily's sake? Forgiveness, Gavin said after a moment, would require remorse on her part. Tess isn't sorry for what she did. She's sorry she got caught. There's a difference. The following morning, Gavin arrived at the courthouse with Pascal Reeves. The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m., but by 9:30, there was still no sign of Tess or her attorney. This is unusual, Pascal commented, checking his watch. Her lawyer was quite insistent about fighting the terms yesterday. At 9:45, a courier delivered an envelope to Pascal. Inside was a single document, Tessa's signed acceptance of all divorce and custody terms, without modification. Attached was a handwritten note addressed to Gavin. You win. Take care of Lily. Well, Pascal said, clearly surprised. That's unexpected, but Gavin wasn't surprised. The night before, he had sent Tess one final message, a comprehensive dossier detailing exactly how thoroughly he had dismantled her life and future prospects. Every social connection severed, every financial resource drained, every escape route blocked. The message was clear. Continuing to fight would only prolong her suffering and damage Lily further. The judge, relieved to have the contentious case resolved, quickly approved the settlement. By noon, Gavin Lockridge was officially divorced, with full custody of his daughter and complete separation from the Harmon family's toxic influence. Outside the courthouse, rain had given way to unexpected sunshine. Gavin paused on the steps, turning his face toward the warmth. For the first time in months, he felt the vice of rage and betrayal loosen its grip on his heart. Not because he had forgiven, he never would, but because justice had been served. The scales have been balanced. His phone buzzed with a text from Apollo. It's done. GM just pleaded guilty to all charges. 25 years, no possibility of parole. Griffin Maddox, facing overwhelming evidence of his financial crimes, both real and those Gavin had engineered, had accepted a plea deal rather than risk an even longer sentence. He would spend the next quarter-century in federal prison, his reputation, fortune, and freedom entirely destroyed. That evening, as Gavin helped Lily build a blanket fort in their new living room, his daughter looked up at him with those perceptive eyes that never missed anything. Dad, are you still sad about Mom? Gavin considered the question carefully. I'm sad about what happened, but not sad in the way you might think. Sometimes people make choices that hurt others very badly, and when that happens, it changes everything. Like when she kissed Uncle Griffin? Yes, like that, Gavin answered gently. But you don't need to worry about any of that. What's important is that you and I are together, and that's never going to change. Lily seemed to accept this, returning her attention to the construction project at hand. Our fort needs a flag, she declared. All strongholds need a flag. You're absolutely right, Gavin agreed, smiling at her resilience. And this is definitely a stronghold. Later, after Lily was asleep, Gavin stood at the window of his penthouse, looking out over the city lights. In his hand was a small velvet box containing the wedding ring he had removed months ago. With a decisive gesture, he dropped it into the wastebasket beside his desk. The chapter was closed. The game was over. Checkmate. Chapter 8. Ashes and Embers. 6 months after the divorce, winter had settled over Rochester with uncharacteristic gentleness. Light snow dusted the city like powdered sugar, transforming the urban landscape into something from postcard. From his office window, Gavin watched pedestrians hurrying along the sidewalks below, scarves wrapped tightly against the cold. Lockridge Security had expanded significantly, absorbing not only Diane Harmon's marketing firm, but several other local businesses as well. The company now occupied 3 floors of the downtown high-rise, employing over 200 people. Success, however, felt different than Gavin had anticipated. The satisfaction was there, but it was tempered by a certain hollowness, a space where something vital had once resided. The Singapore contract came through, Apollo announced, entering with a tablet in hand. Final signatures this afternoon. It's our biggest international deal yet. Good, Gavin replied, turning from the window. What about the Dubai proposal? Still in negotiations, but looking promising. Word has spread about our handling of the Rochester hospital security breach. Referrals are coming in from all over. In the other matter, Apollo's expression sobered. Tess left town last week. According to our sources, she's relocated to Seattle. New name, new start. Gavin nodded, feeling nothing at the news. After the divorce, Tess had attempted to rebuild her life locally, but doors that had once opened eagerly for her remained firmly closed. Her decision to leave Rochester had been inevitable, a tactical retreat from a battlefield where victory was impossible. Has she tried to contact Lily? Gavin asked, Not since the Christmas card, the one you returned unopened. There was a hint of reproach in Apollo's voice that Gavin chose to ignore. His friend had always been the more forgiving of the two, arguing occasionally that Tessa's continued estrangement from her daughter might ultimately hurt Lily more than it punished Tess. Gavin disagreed. Some betrayals were too fundamental to overcome, some wounds too deep to heal. The child psychologist says Lily's doing well, Gavin said, changing the subject. Her anxiety has decreased significantly, and she's making friends at her new school. Kids are resilient, Apollo agreed. But they also remember. Before Gavin could respond, his assistant buzzed through on the intercom. Mr. Lockridge, there's a Bryn Maddox here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Gavin exchanged a surprised glance with Apollo. They hadn't heard from Griffin's ex-wife in months. Send her in. Bryn entered looking healthier than the last time Gavin had seen her. The haunted expression that had shadowed her features during Griffin's trial had faded, replaced by a composed determination. Sorry to drop in unannounced, she said, declining Gavin's offer of seat. I'm catching a flight in a few hours and wanted to see you before I left. You're leaving Rochester? Apollo asked. For good, she confirmed. There's nothing left for me here except painful memories. Where will you go? Gavin inquired, studying her carefully. Boston initially. My sister lives there. Then possibly Europe. I've accepted a position with an international aid organization. Gavin nodded approvingly. A fresh start. That's good. That's partly why I'm here, Bryn continued. To thank you for making it possible. The settlement from Griffin's assets has given me freedom I never thought I'd have. I had nothing to do with that, Gavin said carefully. The courts determined the distribution of assets. Bryn smiled knowingly. Of course. Just like you had nothing to do with the anonymous tip that helped me secure property in the Caymans that Griffin had hidden from everyone, including his lawyers. Gavin remained silent, neither confirming nor denying her assumption. Anyway, she continued, I also wanted to give you this. She withdrew an envelope from her purse and placed it on his desk. It's a letter from Griffin. He asked me to deliver it when I visited him last month. You visited him in prison? Apollo asked, surprised. Bryn's expression hardened slightly. Closure. Something I needed for myself. And what does Griffin want from me? Gavin inquired, making no move to touch the envelope. He didn't say, but he seemed different. 25 years is a long time to reflect on your mistakes. After Bryn left, promising to stay in touch, Apollo gestured toward the envelope. Are you going to read it? Eventually, Gavin replied, slipping it into his desk drawer. But not today. Later that evening, after picking up Lily from her chess lesson, a new interest she had developed with surprising intensity, Gavin prepared dinner while she worked on homework at the kitchen counter. The domestic routine they had established felt comfortable now, the initial awkwardness of being a single parent giving way to a natural rhythm. Dad, Lily asked, looking up from her math worksheet. Is it true that Mom moved away? Gavin paused, knife hovering over the cutting board. Yes. Who told you that? Madison at school. Her mom knows Grandma Diane. I see. Gavin resumed, chopping vegetables, considering his response carefully. Yes, your mom has moved to another city. Will we ever see her again? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with implications Lily couldn't possibly understand. Gavin set down the knife and moved to sit beside his daughter. That's complicated, Lilybug. Your mom made some choices that hurt our family very badly. Sometimes when that happens, it's better for people to be apart. Even if they're a mom and her kid, Lily pressed, her eyes serious. Even then, sometimes, Gavin answered honestly. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you. And it definitely doesn't mean you can't love her. Lily seemed to consider this. I miss her sometimes. Is that okay? Of course it is, Gavin assured her, though the words cost him something to say. She's your mother. Nothing will ever change that. Later, after Lily was asleep, Gavin retrieved Griffin's letter from his briefcase. For several minutes, he simply held it, debating whether to read it or throw it away unopened. Curiosity finally won out. The handwriting was shaky, lacking the confident flourish Gavin remembered from Griffin's signature on business documents and holiday cards. Gavin, I don't expect forgiveness or understanding. I don't deserve either. But after months of therapy and reflection, I feel compelled to offer you something I should have given long ago: truth. My relationship with Tess wasn't some grand passion or star-crossed love affair. It was vanity and weakness on both our parts. We were attracted to what we represented to each other, not who we really were. I was flattered by her admiration. She was drawn to what she perceived as my social status. Neither of us considered the destruction we would cause. I want you to know that your daughter was never part of our plans. The passport application was Diane's idea, not ours. Tess rejected it immediately, though I admit I considered it. That failure of character is among my many regrets. You orchestrated my downfall with a precision that still awes me. Every avenue of escape was blocked, every contingency anticipated. I underestimated you completely, and I paid the price for that arrogance. I don't ask for your pity. I made my choices and now live with their consequences. But I do ask one thing. Consider allowing Tess some relationship with Lily. Not for Tess's sake, but for your daughter's. Children shouldn't have to bear the weight of adult failures. Griffin Maddox. Gavin refolded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Griffin's words stirred something uncomfortable within him. Not sympathy, but a nagging question about whether his pursuit of justice had calcified into something harder and less defensible. The next morning, after dropping Lily at school, Gavin made an unscheduled visit to Diane Harmon's estate. The once immaculate property showed subtle signs of neglect. Unraked leaves, peeling paint on the garden gate, blinds perpetually drawn. Like her daughter, Diane had experienced a dramatic fall from grace. Though she had avoided legal consequences due to Gavin's intervention, her social and political influence had evaporated overnight. Diane answered the door herself, looking older and more frail than he remembered. She regarded him with wary surprise. "Gavin, this is unexpected. May I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. The interior of the house was dim and musty, as if windows hadn't been opened in months. "I assume this isn't a social call," Diane said, leading him to the study where they had last spoken. "Has something happened to Lily?" "Lily's fine," Gavin assured her. "I'm here about Tess." Diane sank into an armchair, suddenly alert. "What about her?" "I understand she's left Rochester." "Yes, there is nothing left for her here," Diane replied, a hint of accusation in her tone. "You saw to that quite thoroughly." "She's still seeing the therapist I arranged?" Gavin asked, ignoring the barb. "As far as I know. She calls once a week, but she shares little about her new life. I think she's afraid I'll somehow compromise it, given my track record." Gavin nodded, understanding the self-recrimination beneath Diane's words. "I've been thinking about Lily's relationship with her mother." Hope flickered in Diane's eyes. "Are you considering allowing contact?" "Supervised visits," Gavin clarified, "if the therapist confirms Tess's stability and commitment to treatment. And only if Lily wants it." "She will," Diane said confidently. "She asks about her mother every time she visits." "There would be conditions," Gavin continued, his tone hardening. "Strict boundaries. Any attempt to manipulate Lily or turn her against me would end the arrangement permanently." "I understand," Diane agreed quickly. "And thank you. This means more than you know." As Gavin prepared to leave, Diane called after him. "Was it worth it, Gavin? All of it? The destruction, the vengeance?" He paused at the door, considering the question seriously. "Justice isn't about worth," he finally answered. "It's about balance. Actions have consequences. You taught Tess many things, but never that fundamental truth. And now we all live with those consequences, including me." That evening, as snow fell gently outside their penthouse windows, Gavin and Lily built another blanket fort, a tradition they had maintained since moving into the new apartment. Inside its fabric walls, illuminated by string lights, they ate pizza and played board games. "Dad," Lily asked as Gavin contemplated his next chess move, "if I want to see Mom sometime, would that be okay?" Gavin looked up, meeting his daughter's earnest gaze. In that moment, he saw not just Lily, but echoes of the future young woman she would become. someone who would eventually form her own judgments about her parents and their choices. Yes, he said finally. If that's what you want, we can arrange it. Lily's face brightened with surprised delight. Really? You wouldn't be mad? Your feelings matter, Lilybug. They always have. Your mom made mistakes, serious ones, but she loves you. That hasn't changed. As Lily hugged him fiercely, Gavin felt something shift within him. Not forgiveness, exactly, but perhaps the first recognition that healing and justice might sometimes require different paths. It didn't mean forgetting or excusing what had happened. Some betrayals left permanent scars. But for Lily's sake, he could allow this small opening, this narrow bridge across the chasm that would forever separate him from his former life. The game would continue, but with new rules. And this time, perhaps, without complete devastation as its goal. Chapter 9. Iron and Ash. Spring arrived in Rochester with a riot of color, as if nature itself was determined to erase all memory of winter's austerity. Cherry blossoms lined the streets downtown, their pale pink petals drifting on the breeze like organic confetti. In the park across from Lockridge Security's headquarters, early tulips pushed through the soil in precise formations, a kaleidoscope of reds and yellows against the fresh green grass. Gavin stood at his office window, watching people enjoying the first truly warm day of the season. A year had passed since his world had imploded, a year of reconstruction, recalibration, and redefinition. Lockridge Security had nearly doubled in size, expanding into international markets with a reputation for uncompromising excellence. Professionally, Gavin had never been more successful. Personally, the landscape was more complex. The quarterly reports are ready for your review, his new assistant announced from the doorway. And Ms. Harmon is in the lobby. Gavin turned, surprised. Tess. No, sir. Diane Harmon. More unexpected visitors. Gavin checked his watch. He had 30 minutes before his next meeting. Send her up. Diane entered his office with a dignity that belied her diminished circumstances. After their conversation 3 months earlier, she had sold her mansion and moved into a modest condominium, donating much of the proceeds to charity, a transparent attempt at image rehabilitation that had been met with skepticism by Rochester's social elite. Thank you for seeing me without an appointment, she said, declining his offer of refreshment. I'll be brief. Is this about Lily's birthday next week? Gavin asked. We've already discussed the arrangements for her party. No, it's about Tess. Diane pulled an envelope from her purse, a gesture reminiscent of Bryn's visit months earlier. She asked me to give you this. She would have delivered it herself, but she wasn't welcome in his office or anywhere in his life beyond the strictly supervised visitations with Lily that had begun cautiously 6 weeks earlier. Those meetings, held at a neutral location with a family counselor present, had been awkward but ultimately positive for Lily. Tess had adhered rigorously to every boundary Gavin established, never once attempting to circumvent his authority or influence their daughter against him. What is it? He asked, making no move to take the envelope. An opportunity, Diane replied cryptically, one I encouraged her to offer, though she was reluctant. Intrigued despite himself, Gavin accepted the envelope. Inside was a formal business proposal. Teresa Harmon, she had reverted to her maiden name, had established a boutique cybersecurity consulting firm in Seattle, specializing in protection for nonprofit organizations. She was proposing a strategic partnership with Lockridge Security, leveraging their complementary expertise. A business proposition? Gavin raised an eyebrow. Why would I consider this? Because it makes financial sense, Diane answered pragmatically. Tess may have made catastrophic personal choices, but her business acumen remains exceptional. Her firm has secured contracts with 3 major international humanitarian organizations in just 4 months. I'm not interested in helping her rebuild her career. Then consider it from a purely strategic perspective, Diane countered. The partnership would give Lockridge Security a West Coast presence without the overhead of establishing a new office. It would also open doors to a client base you've been trying to penetrate for years. How do you know what markets I'm targeting? Diane smiled faintly. I may be semi-retired, but I still read the business journals. Your recent hiring patterns suggest expansion into the nonprofit sector. Gavin set the proposal aside. I'll review it and pass it to my team for assessment. No promises. That's all she's asking. Diane rose to leave, then hesitated. She's different, Gavin. The therapy, the distance, the consequences, they've changed her. Not superficially, but fundamentally. People don't change their essential nature, Gavin replied skeptically. Perhaps not, but they can recognize their flaws and work to overcome them. Diane moved toward the door, then turned back. She's not asking for forgiveness. She knows that's impossible. But maybe, for Lily's sake, there can be something better than this Cold War between her parents. After Diane left, Gavin found himself rereading the proposal with growing interest. It was meticulously researched, financially sound, and strategically aligned with his company's goals. There was no hint of sentimentality or personal appeal, just pure business logic presented with professional detachment. That evening, as he and Lily walked through the cherry blossom-lined path in the park near their apartment, his daughter surprised him with an observation. "Mom's different now," she said, licking an ice cream cone. "She listens more, and she doesn't look sad all the time anymore." "That's good," Gavin replied carefully. "How do you feel about seeing her these past few weeks?" Lily considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. "Happy, but also weird sometimes. Like I'm not sure what to say to her." She glanced up at him. "Is it okay that I like spending time with her?" "Of course it is," Gavin assured her. "She's your mother. Nothing will ever change that. Will you and Mom ever be friends again?" The innocent question contained layers of complexity that Lily couldn't possibly understand. Gavin chose his words carefully. Sometimes when trust is broken between adults, it can't be fully repaired. But that doesn't mean we can't find a way to be respectful to each other, especially when it comes to you. Lily seemed satisfied with this answer, her attention already shifting to a group of ducks waddling toward the pond. Gavin watched her run ahead, struck by how much she had grown in the past year, not just physically but emotionally. The night terrors that had plagued her after the divorce had faded. The anxiety that had manifested in nail-biting and restlessness had diminished. She was thriving despite everything, perhaps even because of it. Children, as Apollo had observed, were indeed resilient. 2 days later, after his business team had reviewed Tessa's proposal and endorsed it enthusiastically, Gavin found himself in a sleek Seattle conference room. The meeting had been arranged through intermediaries, neutral ground, professional setting, strictly business. Tess arrived precisely on time, accompanied by her chief technical officer, a former NSA analyst whose credentials Gavin had thoroughly vetted. The woman who entered bore little resemblance to the Tess Lockridge who had moved through Rochester's social circles with calculated grace. This Teresa Harmon was more subdued, her designer wardrobe replaced by a simple but elegant pantsuit, her once elaborate hairstyle now a practical bob. The only jewelry she wore was a small silver pendant, nothing flashy or expensive. "Thank you for considering our proposal," she said after introductions, her tone professionally cordial. "I appreciate you making the trip to Seattle." The meeting proceeded with methodical efficiency. Tess presented her company's capabilities, recent projects, and proposed integration points with Lockridge Security. Her technical knowledge had clearly deepened. She spoke confidently about encryption protocols and network vulnerabilities in a way that impressed even Gavin, who had always respected her intelligence, if not her character. 2 hours later, as they finalized the preliminary terms of a strategic partnership, Tess asked her CTO to handle the remaining details with Apollo, who had joined remotely. "Could we speak privately for a moment?" she asked Gavin once they were alone. He nodded, maintaining his professional demeanor. "Of course. I want to be clear about something," Tess began, meeting his gaze directly. "This partnership is not an attempt to insinuate myself back into your life or to manipulate my relationship with Lily. If you're concerned about that." "I'm not," Gavin interrupted. "If I were, I wouldn't be here." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Because Lily deserves parents who can at least function as respectful co-parents, even if forgiveness isn't possible. On that, we agree. I know you'll never forgive me," Tess continued, her voice steady despite the difficult subject. I wouldn't expect you to. What I did, what Griffin and I did, with my mother's help, was unforgivable. The betrayal, the plotting, the lies. I have no excuses. You've never actually apologized, you know, Gavin observed, his tone more curious than accusatory. Not once in all this time. Tess looked genuinely surprised, because I thought it would be insulting, like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. An apology seemed woefully inadequate given the damage I caused. Perhaps, Gavin acknowledged, but it's still customary. She took a deep breath. You're right. And I'm sorry, Gavin. Deeply, genuinely sorry for the pain I caused you and for the damage I did to our family. Not because I got caught or because I suffered consequences, but because what I did was wrong. Fundamentally, inexcusably wrong. The words hung in the air between them, neither healing the wounds nor enlarging them, simply acknowledging their existence and legitimacy. Gavin felt no surge of forgiveness, no cathartic release, but perhaps a slight easing of the perpetual tension that had characterized their interactions since the divorce. Thank you for saying that, he said finally. It matters, even if it doesn't change anything. I don't expect it to, Tess assured him, but Lily matters to both of us. And if we're going to have this business relationship, I wanted to clear the air as much as possible. As they prepared to part ways, Tess hesitated. How is she doing, really? Beyond what I see during our visits. She's thriving, Gavin answered honestly. Straight A's, chess club champion, and she started taking karate lessons. She's resilient. Like her father, Tess observed with a small, sad smile. And her mother, Gavin added, surprising them both with the acknowledgement. Whatever your flaws, stubbornness and resilience were always among your strengths. The partnership between Lockridge Security and Harmon Cybersecurity proved remarkably successful over the following months. Their companies remained separate entities, but their collaborative projects generated substantial revenue and industry recognition. Professional respect gradually replaced cold formality in their limited interactions. 6 months after their Seattle meeting, as autumn painted Rochester in fiery hues, Gavin received a call from the security team at his daughter's school. Lily had been approached by a stranger in the parking lot, a man who claimed to be a friend of her mother's and offered to drive her to her karate lesson. Alert and well-trained by both her parents about potential dangers, Lily had immediately reported the incident to a teacher. By the time Gavin arrived at the school, local police had reviewed security footage and identified the man as Willis Maddox, Griffin's older brother, who had publicly blamed Gavin for his siblings' downfall. The attempted contact with Lily represented a serious escalation, one that Gavin would not tolerate. He called Tess immediately. Did you know about this? He demanded without preamble. Know about what? Her confusion seemed genuine. Gavin explained the situation, listening carefully for any hint of foreknowledge or involvement. He heard only shock, followed by cold anger that matched his own. I swear to you, Gavin, I had no idea, Tess said, her voice tight with controlled fury. Willis Maddox has never been a friend of mine, and I would never authorize anyone to approach Lily without your knowledge. His brother is serving 25 years because of what happened, Gavin pointed out. He has reason to hold a grudge. Against both of us, Tess countered. I was equally complicit in Griffin's disgrace, more so from his family's perspective. That night, after ensuring Lily was safely asleep in her bed, Gavin made a call to an old contact, someone from his former life who specialized in persuasive negotiations. The message to be delivered to Willis Maddox was simple. Any further attempt to contact Gavin's daughter would result in consequences far worse than those his brother had faced. To his surprise, Tess called the next morning with similar news. I've handled the Willis situation, she said without elaboration. He won't be approaching Lily or anyone else in our family again. How did you manage that? Gavin asked, genuinely curious. Let's just say that the Maddox family has more secrets than they'd like exposed. I made it clear that my discretion depends entirely on their complete disassociation from our lives. The incident, though disturbing, had an unexpected effect. It reminded them both that despite everything that had transpired between them, they shared a fundamental priority, protecting their daughter. That common ground, narrow though it was, provided a foundation for something resembling civil co-parenting. By the time Lily's 8th birthday arrived in late October, Gavin had reached a decision that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. He invited Tess to attend the small celebration at their apartment rather than arranging a separate event for her with Lily. Apollo raised his eyebrows at the news, but wisely kept his observations to himself. The birthday gathering was deliberately modest. Just Gavin, Tess, Apollo, and two of Lily's closest friends from school. There was cake, presents, and a surprising absence of tension. Tess maintained appropriate boundaries, made no attempt to monopolize Lily's attention, and even assisted with cleaning up afterward without being asked. As she prepared to leave, Lily hugged her fiercely. "Thanks for coming to my party, Mom. It was the best birthday ever." "Thank your dad," Tess replied, meeting Gavin's gaze over their daughter's head. "He's the one who made it possible." Later, after everyone had left and Lily was playing with her new chemistry set under Gavin's supervision, she looked up suddenly with a thoughtful expression. "Dad, are you still mad at Mom?" Gavin considered the question carefully. "I'm not mad anymore, no. But what happened between us changed things permanently. Do you understand that?" Lily nodded slowly, like when you break a glass. Even if you glue it back together, it's never the same as before. "That's a good analogy," Gavin agreed, impressed by her perception. "Some breaks can't be completely fixed. But you're being nicer to each other now," she observed. "And that makes me happy. We're both trying our best," Gavin assured her. "For you." That night, long after Lily had gone to bed, Gavin stood on his penthouse balcony watching the city lights shimmer against the autumn darkness. He thought about the journey of the past year, the rage that had propelled him through those early months, the cold calculation of his revenge, and the gradual transition to something less consuming. He had not forgiven Tess. He never would. Some betrayals cut too deep, severed too much, to ever be truly pardoned. But he had reached a state of detachment that allowed him to interact with her, when necessary, without the constant burn of anger. For Lily's sake, he had found a way to coexist with a woman who had once been the center of his world and then become his greatest adversary. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something else, a pragmatic recognition that continuing to actively punish Tess served no purpose now that justice had been served. The scales had been balanced. Griffin Maddox remained in prison, his reputation and fortune destroyed. Diane Harmon lived in diminished circumstances, her political aspirations permanently extinguished. Tess had lost her social standing, her financial security, and most painfully, her place in her daughter's daily life. The punishment had fit the crime. And now, like iron cooling after being shaped by fire, the white-hot rage had tempered into something harder, more durable, but less consuming. Gavin Lockridge would never forget what had been done to him. He would never fully trust his ex-wife or welcome her back into his inner circle. But he would permit her continued presence in their daughter's life as long as she maintained the boundaries he had established. He would engage in civil business dealings that benefited both their companies. He would, in essence, allow life to move forward, shaped by what had happened but not eternally defined by it. As for himself, the experience had revealed aspects of his character that even he hadn't fully recognized: a capacity for strategic patience, an unwavering commitment to justice, and a depth of love for his daughter that transcended everything else. He had emerged from the crucible not unscathed, but stronger in the broken places, like metal forged in fire. Iron and ash, destruction and renewal. The warning his daughter had whispered at his mother-in-law's door had set in motion events that transformed their lives completely. But from those ashes, something new had risen. Not perfect, not whole, but enduring. And for now, that was enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.